Good evening. Welcome back to another Classic Comics live stream. Hope you're having a good weekend. There was actually some storms here earlier with marble-sized hail. It seems to have passed, but I don't know. This stream might end abruptly. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Anyway, I want to say thank you to those who tune in to watch the stream and those who will tune in on a rewatch as well. So, what am I going to talk about? Okay, JJ Abrams is going to reboot Krull, apparently. We'll talk about that. The WGA strike may be ending soon. Looks like they're trying to hammer out an agreement. I'll talk about that a little bit. Bob Iger says he wants to quote unquote quiet the noise around Disney and the culture wars. I'll talk a little about that and what I think that means. What else have we got here? Let's see. We'll talk a little about Jason Momoa. Apparently, he was not nice to Amber Heard on the set of Aquaman 2. Margot Robbie probably coming back as Harley Quinn. IDW Comics published their quarterly earnings for the fourth quarter, and they didn't go well. It didn't go well for them. They lost a good bit of money. We'll talk about the budget for the Marvels and a few other things. All right, so let's just go ahead and start off with Jar Jar Abrams here. So this is from, where is that? Okay, yeah, this is from giantfreakingrobot.com. And let me bring this up here. There we go. All right. Exclusive Krull reboot to be Krull reboot in the works. JJ Abrams attached. If you're worried that JJ Abrams wants to reboot everything you loved when you were younger, the good news is that not many people loved this movie until long after it was deemed a box office bomb. Hey, some of us liked it right from the start. I mean, I'm not going to lie and sit here and say I think Krull's a great movie, but I remember seeing it as a kid and really enjoying it. It's this weird, it's this weird kind of mishmash of fantasy, but with some obvious sort of Star Wars style touches. The bad guys basically shoot lasers for whatever reason. And I want to tell you, just about every kid who played D&D in the 80s, they wanted to have the glaive as their weapon. I think probably every kid playing D&D in the early 80s tried to create a D&D version of the glaive. All right. So our trusted and proven sources tell us that JJ Abrams, the guy who helped revive the film franchises for Star Trek and Star Wars, revive them and kill them, is attached to direct a reboot of the 1983 sci-fi fantasy flop Krull for Warner Brothers. If you're not familiar with Krull, then depending on where you land, you're either missing out on a 1980s classic, or one day you can move to the next life knowing at least 2 hours of your current life was spared. Clearly hoping to ride the coattails of bigger genre hits of the day, Krull is a sci-fi fantasy fusion with a simple fairy tale premise. The princess is kidnapped, and the prince and his allies go on a quest to save her. Ken Marshall plays Prince Colwyn, who wields the most visually memorable part of Krull, the five-pointed glaive. The film didn't exactly turn Marshall into a superstar, but it does feature appearances by at least two actors who would later become much more well known. Yeah, Liam Neeson was in it. Robbie Coltrane, um, and Alan Armstrong. Is that guy's name? I've seen this guy in a lot of things over the years. He never became a big star like Coltrane and Liam Neeson did, though. Owen meets up with a group of bandits who he wins to his side. One is played by a young Liam Neeson, another is played by the late Robbie Coltrane. Although his voice was dubbed over by Michael Elphick, really, or Michael Elpick. I didn't know that. Critics hated Krull. Box office receipts failed to make back its $30 million production budget, and any dreams Ken Marshall may have harbored about becoming a blockbuster leading man were dashed. Years later, Marshall would earn himself a well respected spot in the Star Trek franchise as Michael Eddington, a Deep Space Nine character who begins as a recurring pain in the butt and eventually graduates to a recurring villain. Yeah, I remember, because when he first appeared on Deep Space Nine, I had no idea that that was the same guy who had been in Krull because he looked very different. He didn't have the beard and the mustache, but he had gone mostly bald, so most of his hair was gone. And yeah, when I realized or when I learned that was the same guy, I was just like floored. I was like, what? The news of Warner Brothers rebooting Krull with JJ Abrams attached is interesting for a number of reasons. On the one hand, it isn't Warner Brothers who produced the original film, but Columbia Pictures, which was acquired by Sony 6 years later. Presumably, this news means Warner Brothers must have quietly acquired the Krull rights from Sony. We're also assuming Abrams' attachment to the project must have begun before the current WGA strike and not just because the strikes have slowed down just about everything. Earlier this month, The Hollywood Reporter broke the news that Warner Brothers had suspended its exclusive deals with a number of prominent producers, including Abrams. Yeah, I almost did covered one of those stories on the stream, I think, last week, but I didn't have time for it. Even before the strike, there were reports that Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav wasn't happy with the deal made with Abrams' Bad Robot. Well, why would they be? Warner Brothers gave Abrams and Bad Robot it was like a $500 million. It was like 500 million. And so far they've gotten nothing out of it. Pretty much nothing. Or suspended isn't the same as canceled. And the dual writers and actors strikes have made big question marks hover over everything in the entertainment world. When we have more news about the Krull reboot, we'll make sure you know about it. Yeah, I mean, because a lot of people were like, aha, they fired JJ Abrams, they fired what's her face? Mindy Kaling, and some of these other people, but they didn't fire them. They just temporarily suspended their contracts so they don't have to keep paying them while this strike is in effect. But when the strike's over, they'll just go right back to it. So I mean, they're not fired. But yeah, I can't say this surprises me. I mean, JJ doesn't have an original bone in his body, and pretty much all he can do is rehash stuff. But this is interesting because because a few years back, JJ was singing a different tune. Let me bring this up. And this is from slashfilm.com. And this is from this is from January 9th, 2017. So over 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, or more than that. JJ Abrams says he's done with the remake reboot business. Looking at JJ Abrams' filmography, you'll find a guy with a talent for remaking, rebooting, and remixing. While he's also spearheaded his share of wholly original work, he's become a reliable source for any old franchise in need of an adrenaline injection to heart. Mission Impossible 3, Star Trek, Star Wars, The Force Awakens, it's kind of his thing. But Abrams seems ready to move on to other things, saying that he's ready to spread his wings and fly away from the land of reboots and remakes. Abrams was at the Golden Globes last night where he was representing HBO's Westworld, itself a reboot of the 1973 film on which he is an executive producer. Speaking with people, he revealed his desire for a change of pace, noting it's time for him to start making the stuff that other people will feel the burning desire to reboot down the line. Quote, I feel incredibly lucky to have gotten involved in things that I loved when I was a kid. In fact, even Westworld, which we're here for tonight, is one of them. I don't believe that. But I don't feel any desire to do that again. I feel like I've done enough of that. I'm more excited about working on things that are original ideas that perhaps one day someone else will have to reboot. He also added that storytellers, even those working in familiar arenas, should always push things forward. I do think that if you're telling a story that is not moving anything forward, not introducing anything that's relevant, that's not creating a new mythology or an extension of it, then a complete remake of something feels like a mistake. I mean, there's a little more, but it's. I find it interesting that this was so many years ago. I'm gonna bet money. I don't know what date he signed that deal with Warner Brothers, but I would bet anything that this was right after he signed that deal with Warner Brothers, and he felt like he wouldn't have to do any more reboots. He could just do whatever he wanted and fund his own stuff. But yes, he was working on some. I think it was like a streaming show. Wasn't called what was it? Demimond, I think it was called. And Zaslav came in. When he came in, I think shortly after he got there, he killed that because it was going to be so massively expensive. It was like crazy the price tag on it. And my guess is he's going to start doing reboots again because he can't get any of his own stuff off the ground. All righty. All right, let's move on to the WGA strike. Let me bring this one up. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. Studios present best and final offers to Writers Guild. And this is from, I think this is this from yesterday? Yeah, I guess it's yesterday. The Writers Guild of America and the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers appear to be nearing the finish line on a deal that could end a historic 145-day strike after the studios presented an alleged best and final offer to the union. The company's latest offer was made on Saturday, according to studio side sources familiar with the latest talks. In a joint statement, the AMPTP and WGA said, we met for bargaining on Saturday and we'll meet again on Sunday. Earlier in the day, these sources said that the two parties were very close to reaching a final compromise, and the studio side had continued to work on language regarding regulations on artificial intelligence. Those same sources noted that apprehension about the unpredictable future of AI had complicated the negotiation. The details as of Sunday afternoon were with company side lawyers, whose studio sources said had been hard at work on language since Friday night. They began working on the details on Saturday at around 10 a.m. Management side sources noted that new streaming residual compensation is part of the package and it is not tied to health and pension funds. The denouement arrives during the fourth consecutive day of work towards a tentative deal. Top company leaders, Disney's Bob Iger, Warner Brothers Discovery's David Zaslav, NBC Universal's Donna Langley, and Netflix's Ted Sarandos, joined the talks at the AMPTP's Sherman Oaks headquarters on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The CEOs did not appear to be in attendance on Saturday, but reps from the studios did gather via Zoom. Studio side made moves in the previous days on issues including AI TV, staffing sizes, and compensation tied to the success of streaming projects, according to management side sources. On Thursday night, there was a brief chill in relations between the parties when the Writers Guild allegedly came back late in the evening with new asks on items that the companies believed had already been settled. However, the next day, the parties made, quote, lots of progress and engaged in good faith, but they need more time, unquote, said one management side source on Friday. So it looks like this is winding down. Um, I don't know. I would be quite happy if it continued. To be honest, I'm almost happy or almost disappointed to see it end. I was enjoying seeing studios in Hollywood lose money, but you can't win them all. And it'll be interesting to see what they hammer out as far as the AI issue is concerned. My guess is that, I mean, because as I've said before in previous streams and previous videos, this ain't going to go away. So my guess is they're just going to kick this can down the road to an extent, maybe a few years. And then when the current, whatever the next agreement is, when that's up, we'll see a whole new, probably round of strikes because they're going to be getting to the point where the studios aren't going to need the actors anymore or need the writers anymore. Um, but that's a few years off, but probably not that long. Okay. Now, since we're talking about studios, let's talk about Disney. All right, this is from Reuters. Disney CEO says company will quiet the noise in culture wars, according to analyst note. Walt Disney CEO Bob Iger told investors the company will, quote, quiet the noise, unquote, in a culture war that has pitted social conservatives against the global media and entertainment conglomerate, according to an analyst note on Wednesday. Iger's brief statement, included in an analyst report from Needham media analyst Laura Martin, was part of an investor's presentation on Tuesday at Walt Disney Resort in Orlando, Florida, in which the CEO also announced Disney will double its investment in theme parks and cruise ships over the next decade. Disney is struggling to make its streaming businesses profitable, improve the quality of its films, position its flagship sports brand ESPN to stream directly to consumers, and potentially shed its television networks. In its most recent quarter, the company beat Wall Street's profit expectations but fell short on revenue. Disney declined comment. The entertainment company was thrust at the center of the nation's culture wars in 2022 when it publicly criticized Florida legislation restricting classroom discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity. Governor Ron DeSantis responded by campaigning against woke Disney and working with the state legislature to strip it of self governing authority over the parks. Florida and Disney are locked in a legal battle over the formation of the Central Florida Oversight District Board, which assumed oversight of development in the nearly 25,000 acres of property in and around Disney's theme parks. It's unclear how much of the 60 billion in new investment in parks will be spent in Florida, where Disney faces increased competition from rivals such as Universal Orlando Resort. Iger previously said the company planned to spend 17 billion in investment at Disney World over the next 10 years. Parks have become a reliable profit engine for Disney at a challenging time for the company. Disney also faced social media backlash from conservative commentators over the casting of Halle Bailey, a black actress in the lead role of Ariel in The Little Mermaid, though the movie ended up making 570 million worldwide, making it the seventh highest grossing film of 2023 so far, according to Box Office Mojo. Several countries last year blocked the release of the Pixar animation studio's film Lightyear, which depicts a same sex couple sharing a brief kiss. Iger's remarks about its content appear to mirror those he made at the company's annual shareholder meeting in April. At the time, Iger was responding to an investor who said the company was becoming too concerned with social issues. Quote, our primary mission needs to be to entertain and to have a positive impact on the world, unquote, Iger said at the time. I'm very serious about that. It should not be agenda driven. Okay, well, what does positive impact on the world mean? I mean, I'm sure that most of the people who are pushing this, the LGBTQ stuff and the feminist stuff in their Disney films, I'm sure they think that that's making the world a better place. And a lot of people are saying, oh, they're retreating on the wokeness. They're going to abandon wokeness. They're retreating in the culture war. I don't buy it. I mean, Iger said, quiet the noise. What does that mean? I mean, maybe it means they'll change, but I think more likely is what they're going to do is they're just going to be more subtle about it. They're not going to be so much in your face, and when they come out with new films, the marketing won't revolve around, look how woke this is. Look at how we race flipped these characters. Look how we've got a gay couple in this movie, that sort of thing. That stuff's still going to be there. They're just not going to tout it as much and call attention to it as much, again, in order to quiet the noise. But I don't see this as being some big change for Disney. I mean, maybe it will, but I'll believe it when I see it. All right. Uh, got another one here. So let's talk about Aquaman 2, and this is from ScreenGeek.net. Jason Momoa accused of tormenting Amber Heard on Aquaman 2 set. Amber Heard faced a number of controversies during the production of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, aka Aquaman 2. Many of these issues revolved around her lawsuit with her ex husband, actor Johnny Depp. Now, an alleged batch of unsealed courtroom documents suggest that Jason Momoa would dress up like Johnny Depp to torment Amber Heard. The documents were shared via Reddit, where they were noted to be notes from Heard's therapist, Dr. Dawn Hughes. As the Reddit user who posted them explained, they, quote, revealed James Wan and Jason Momoa blamed Amber Heard for increasing harassment and eventually wanted her fired. It was after this that, quote, Momoa used to come to set dressed like Johnny Depp, unquote. Now, let me say first of all, I mean, I don't know that it's really. Oh well, whatever. I'll just go through it. Um, it's certainly a surprising revelation and one that suggests there's so much more behind the scenes regarding both Amber Heard and Johnny Depp than what was revealed at the trial. It's also interesting when considering that Amber Heard was always said to be an intended part of Aquaman 2. After all, it must have been difficult if Jason Momoa and James Wan both wanted her fired, especially if Momoa could have then been dressing like Johnny Depp in response to her staying aboard. The new sequel was directed by James Wan from a screenplay written by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick. Who? Oh, whatever. He co-wrote the first Aquaman movie alongside Will Beall and James Wan. Oh, okay. Don't know that name. In addition to Jason Momoa as Aquaman and Amber Heard as Mira, the cast of the film includes Patrick Wilson, Dolph Lundgren. Oh, Dolph Lundgren's back. Okay. And Yahya Abdul Mateen as Black Manta. Well, what occurred to me as far as this goes is, Jason Momoa, he played the villain in that last Fast and the Furious film. And I didn't see it, but I heard that his portrayal of the villain was kind of like it was almost like he was channeling Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow. He was acting very wacky and eccentric and all this stuff. And I don't know, maybe he was sort of doing some of that on the set of Aquaman, maybe as a joke, and Amber Heard took that as, an attack on her. Could that be it? I don't know. Um, I don't know. I wonder if that isn't possible. In any case, I don't I don't really have any sympathy for Amber Heard, so. Oh, okay. Now here's another DC films related story, and I kind of figured this was coming. And this again is from Screen Geek. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn return just confirmed. So the DCEU franchise has expanded in a number of interesting ways in recent years. Furthermore, we've seen an overhaul at Warner Brothers recently that put an even bigger change on the growing franchise. Um, with films like Batgirl completely canceled and other standalone films like the upcoming Joker sequel on the way, it's hard to tell what may have been in store for the brand. As such, many fans are uncertain whether or not Margot Robbie would return to play Harley Quinn, but as the Suicide Squad director James Gunn would have it, he confirms that Margot Robbie will indeed return. He confirmed that much when a fan asked on Twitter whether or not Harley Quinn would return in the DCEU. Uh, but James Gunn has put any of those fears to rest when he answered quite simply yes. And they've got the tweet posted here. Someone named Lawrence asking, "Will Harley Quinn return to the DCU?" Uh, James Gunn said yes. I guess he means DCU because obviously he's not going to be the DCEU. This doesn't surprise me. Once Barbie was such a big hit, I kind of figured that Warner Brothers would surely be eager to get her back as Harley Quinn again, although she's going to cost a fortune now. And they're going to have to pay dearly. And I wonder if that won't wind up being an impediment. They decide she's too expensive. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I kind of saw that coming. All right. What time is it now? Okay. Now let's talk about some Marvel here for a minute. And I've got a story here from Screen Rant. Why the Marvel's budget is so high. Okay. Marvel's budget has reportedly been revealed, leading many to question why the figure is so high in comparison to other superhero projects. As the Marvel's November 10th, 2023 release date moves closer, more information about the Phase 5 installment is slowly being revealed. One of these reveals pertains to how much the film cost to produce, a growing point of debate among superhero movies of late. Initially, it was reported that the Marvel's MCU production budget set at around 130 million, a refreshingly low budget for a tentpole MCU film. However, a report from Forbes revealed that the actual budget for the film is around 270 million, more than double what was previously reported, a figure that applies itself much more closely to blockbuster superhero films in 2023. That makes the Marvels the fourth most expensive Marvel superhero movie yet and the highest costing non Avengers film. With such a number initially being confirmed, many have been wondering why the Marvel's budget is so inflated, with several aspects of the film providing the answer as to why. Firstly, the Marvel's MCU story is enough to bump up the production cost of the film. Like other high costing productions like Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor movies, the Captain Marvel series is full of cosmic adventures. This requires much more in the way of budget, given the filming in space is obviously not a possibility. Rather than shooting on location using real sets, props, costumes, and environments, the MCU's cosmic movies have to inherently rely more on digital environments, CGI enhancement, and sound stages. Another reason why the Marvel's budget is so high is the fact that it essentially is a team up movie. The movie will bring together three heroes in the form of Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, and Photon, with each character needing their own viable story as part of the Marvel's cast of characters. On top of the added costs of paying three lead actresses instead of one, all three characters will need to be given competent stories to set up future MCU appearances that also happen to be space infused. As such, the Marvel story means the film's budget already has to be higher than the more grounded, singular focused MCU productions. Well, I mean, using digital environments these days is nothing new. I mean, most of these superhero movies, they're heavily reliant on digital sets, and Star Wars is too. Um, some of the Disney movies are too as well. All right. Another element of the Marvels that will have made up a significant chunk of the film's budget is the VFX work. As is the case with the majority of superhero movies of late, the Marvels will require a great deal of CGI. This has already been explored in regards to the film's space setting, which will require a lot of green screen work as well as CGI creations like space stations, spaceships, otherworldly creatures. You mean aliens? I mean, wouldn't you just call them aliens? And so on. Furthermore, the titular trio's powers also require heavy amounts of VFX. All three main characters in the Marvels have light based powers. This differs from heroes like Shang-Chi, Black Widow, or Hawkeye, who need minimal CGI enhancements to sell their abilities or enhance their action scenes. With the Marvels, though, Captain Marvel's flight and energy beams, Kamala Khan's light constructs, and Monica Rambeau's spectrum based abilities all call for VFX to be utilized much more heavily, meaning an inflated budget for the film. The last reason as to why the Marvel's budget is so high links to the growing trend of superhero movies costing obscene amounts of money to produce. While this has proven to be the case with the likes of Black Adam and The Flash from DC of late, MCU movies have also had increasingly large budgets in recent years. Another recent cosmic production, 2022 Thunder, had a production cost of 250 million. Similarly, 2023's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 also had the same amount, which means the Marvel's budget was seemingly inevitable. I don't know that it's inevitable that the Marvels should have over $100 million more than Guardians of the Galaxy 3 did. I mean, I don't see why that would be the case. Since superhero movies became immensely popular in modern pop culture, the budgets for each production began increasing. With the golden age of superhero movies arguably coming between 2014 and 2019, the success of each installment was all but guaranteed. In phase three alone, the MCU had 6 out of 11 movies cross the $1 billion mark. This continued success meant that the studios could justify giving productions higher budgets, as their success was almost a given. This contributed to films in phases 4 and 5, like the Marvels, receiving increasingly high figures to produce each film, as they were mostly expected to recoup these costs and then some. Top of this growing trend, superhero movies have cost more to produce in recent years as they are simply more grand in scale. In comparison to earlier efforts like Iron Man or Captain America, the first Avenger, which were still based somewhat in reality, the more cosmic, epic nature of recent superhero films has called for higher budgets. From the increasing success of cosmic adventures to the growing trend of the MCU's production costs, and it's certainly no surprise that Marvel's budget almost rivals those of the most expensive MCU films. But I think a lot of it is just coming from this, you know, I've talked about it in previous streams and seen other stories about it that Disney, they're just very wasteful in how they operate. You know, they have this whole technique of they just do rewrite after rewrite, and they'll have scenes done, have the VFX done, then redone, then redone numerous times, and that's got to amount to tremendous bloat in the budget. And if they would just run things more sensibly, and perhaps more competent people running things, then they might not have these massive budgets. Because there's no reason why the Marvel should cost more than Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I don't buy that. I don't see any logical reason for that. There's fewer characters, and yeah, I think that's kind of an excuse to a certain extent. All right. Um, okay. I've got another DC related story here. Let me bring this one up. All right, and this is from Bounding into Comics. Lex Luthor rumored to be running for president in James Gunn's Superman Legacy. All right. James Gunn's script for Superman Legacy is still top secret, but that doesn't stop the internet. You know the way the internet and leaks can be by now. They go hand in glove. Previously, we reported a suspected plot leak about a Middle Eastern conflict a la Black Adam, which may suggest a more prominent or more significant political power struggle if the latest rumor is accurate. Both leaks have to be accurate for there to be political elements in Legacy. But anyway, a hot war of any magnitude usually involves a hegemon on one side. Much of the time, that hegemon is a world power backing one side as an ally or playing both sides against the middle for its own ends. Something to that effect may play out in Superman Legacy with somebody other than the Man of Steel playing Peacemaker in the global crisis. According to a scoop credited to Daniel RPK, obtained by koimoi.com. Okay. Lex Luthor might endeavor to solve the world's problems after he has furthered one of his personal goals. Lex has had political aspirations in the past and sought higher office and won. He was president of the United States once upon a time, and James Gunn might explore that in Legacy. Yes, you heard that right, says the Koi Moi team. Luthor's big role is he runs for president. Whether he wins or not isn't mentioned. If Lex is victorious and is sworn in, that would be enough fuel for a sequel, should there be a cause for one. Superman Legacy has to make a nice profit first, and it's too soon to tell how it will perform when its casting is not even complete yet. David Cornsweet is set as the Kryptonian, and Rachel Brosnahan is locked in as Lois Lane. Luthor, however, is yet to be cast. Nicholas Hoult was rumored to be at the top of the list, but Daniel Craig, Bradley Cooper, and Dave Bautista okay, have also come up late. Dave Bautista, oh God, please. Please not Bautista as Lex Luthor, please. Of course, these are just rumors for now and should be taken with the appropriate grams of salt until the time is right. Yeah, I'm not buying this. Um, for a couple reasons. Now, certainly there is precedent for Lex running for president. Lex ran for president in the comics back in the late 90s. And he won, and he was actually president for a while. It was like in the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, and I mean, it was an interesting storyline, but it's kind of something they've gone back to. Like he ran for president in the Justice League cartoon. If you saw that, he ran for president in there. Uh, he didn't win though. He never even got to the election. He went off the rails first. And then he ran for president on Smallville also. So I don't know. I've kind of seen enough of Luthor running as president, but I just think this would be a bad idea because if you have him run for president as a politician, look, it's Hollywood. You know what they're going to do. They're going to portray him. There's going to be probably, they won't say it outright, but there will be probably strong insinuation or strong inference implication that he's Trump. Basically, he's a substitute for Trump or whatever, and that's really, again, you get back into this whole dividing your audience thing. And if they want Superman Legacy to be a hit, that's a bad way to go. And they need Superman Legacy to be a hit after all these flops. I mean, the DC studios and the DC on film is like, it's in uh, a critical state right now, and they badly need to turn this around. As I've said before, I think the brand is just tainted at this point by so many mediocre films or bad films, and most people just aren't that interested anymore. There's no excitement. I mean, there is some excitement around Superman, but if they make this about Lex running for president, it's, again, you're getting right back into political stuff, and it will not be good for the movie. So I hope they will avoid that. Um, I don't know. We'll see. And uh, Dave Bautista as Luthor. Seriously, ugh. I heard there was a rumor, and I almost did a story on it on the stream, but there was a rumor floating around that what's his name, Giancarlo Esposito, was maybe being considered for Luthor, which I mean, he could probably pull it off. I would prefer, that they do something closer to the comics. We've never really gotten, in film at least, we've never really gotten a really accurate, proper Luthor, because Gene Hackman, as much as I love the Christopher Reeve Superman films, Gene Hackman was playing, kind of a more campy version. I mean, he was basically, what he was, is he was basically playing a Batman villain when you get right down to it, like a Batman TV show version of Lex. Um, and what's his face? Kevin Spacey. Now, I thought he was closer. He was pretty close, but even he was kind of riffing on what Hackman did. He's probably the closest we've got. And then, of course, we had what's his name? Um, I forget the actor's name, but the guy that was in Social Network played Mark Zuckerberg, and was in Zombieland. I forget the actor's name now. And I mean, that just was just a mistake. It was just a mistake. So I'd really like to see a proper Lex Luthor, but I'm not holding my breath on that. Okay. All right. So I got another one here. Bring this up, and this is from ICV2. IDW Publishing loses 1.28 million in quarter. Sales down, expenses up. IDW Publishing showed a loss of 1.28 million in its fiscal Q3 ended July 31st, 2023, the result of lower sales coupled with higher expenses, a difficult combination. The loss was a big drop off from the 595,000 loss in the year ago quarter and from the 200,000 loss in the most recent quarter. IDW Publishing sales of 6.25 million were down 300,000 from the year ago quarter, which the company attributed to a decline of 1.167 million in book market revenue due to the fewer releases in 2023 and smaller decreases in licensing and royalty and in digital sales, partially offset by a jump of 932,000 in direct market revenue from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Lost Years, plus smaller increases in direct-to-consumer sales and book market allowances and returns. Printing costs were up 339,000 in the quarter versus the previous year, according to the report. We also note that it did not appear that expenses related to a major downsizing around the end of April did not appear to hit the operating statement in the previous quarter, so were presumably reflected in the final Q3 report. IDW publishing sales were heavily concentrated in its direct market and book channel distributor, Penguin Random House Publisher Services, which accounted for 72.7% in the of sales in the quarter. Scholastic was 15% of sales. There were virtually no sales in IDW Media Holdings, sorry, no sales in IDW Media Holdings other division, IDW Entertainment, with no ongoing projects and no new options on other revenues due to the Hollywood strike shutdown. IDW Media Holding sales were 6.26 million and the company-wide loss was 1.5 million for the quarter. Yeah, no big surprise here. As they said, I mean, declining sales, higher costs, it's all going to lead to the same place. And of course, I've done videos about this and talked about this in previous streams. Um, it's some of these smaller publishing comic book publishing companies, they're really going to struggle to survive. I don't know how some of them keep going. Valiant is like on life support. IDW is on life support. What is that? Oni Lion Forge or whatever it's called. They are also. And you just wonder how long these smaller companies can keep absorbing these losses and continue, especially now that most of the kind of foreign venture capital from Asia and stuff like that seems to have dried up. So it just seems like I don't know. I just don't see how these companies are going to survive. All right. We got about 15 minutes left. Okay, let me talk about Ahsoka a little bit. And again, this is from Bounding into Comics. Okay, Ahsoka premiere viewership numbers worse than the Mandalorian season 2 and Obi-Wan Kenobi according to new Nielsen numbers. New Nielsen numbers reveal that the premiere viewership of Ahsoka was far worse than The Mandalorian Season 2 and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Nielsen reports that Ahsoka viewership clocked in at 829 million minutes viewed for the week of August 21st through August 27th, the week that Lucasfilm released the first two episodes of the series onto Disney Plus. This is less than premieres for The Mandalorian Season 2 and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Mandalorian Season 2 had a premiere of 1.03 billion minutes back in 2020. Of note, the premiere numbers also or only included the first episode, The Marshal, instead of two episodes like Ahsoka. Obi-Wan Kenobi premiered with 958 million minutes back in 2022. Like Ahsoka, included the first two episodes. The premiere did edge out the Mandalorian season 3 premiere in total minutes. That series debuted on the Nielsen charts with 823 million minutes. Ahsoka also racked up more viewership than the Book of Boba Fett's premiere. That show clocked in with 389 million minutes viewed. However, like Mandalorian season 2, it only debuted with a single episode. It also fared better than Andor, which clocked in at 624 million minutes viewed. However, Andor debuted with 3 episodes. These Nielsen numbers follow up reports from Samba TV that indicated the series had one of the least viewed Disney Plus Star Wars shows since the premiere on The Mandalorian Season 1. Samba TV noted the series only garnered views from 1.2 million US households in its first 6 days. They wrote on X, quote, the latest new Star Wars series, Ahsoka, finally hit screens with 1.2 million US households watching over its first 6 days. This is similar to viewership of Andor's premiere season and slightly lower than The Mandalorian's third season premiere over its first 6 days. Samba TV would report that these viewership numbers were indeed equal to Andor, as they noted the series drew in 1.2 million households as well. However, they also confirmed it was lower than The Mandalorian Season 3, which clocked in at 1.7 million US households. Samba TV also reported that Ahsoka only brought in half the viewership of Obi-Wan Kenobi. The data analytics firm reported Obi-Wan Kenobi was viewed by 2.4 million US households in its first 6 days. They had previously reported that the Book of Boba Fett was viewed by 1.7 million US households in its first 5 days back in January 2022. They also reported that The Mandalorian Season 2 was viewed by 2.08 million US households in its first 4 days. After watching Samba TV released, I'm sorry, after Samba TV released their viewership data for Ahsoka, Lucasfilm released their own numbers, claiming Part 1 of Ahsoka, Master and Apprentice, was the most watched title on Disney Plus this past week. The debut episode garnered 14 million views, making the series number one globally on the streaming platform. Number one on their platform. Not number one in the world or all platforms, but just on their platform. Okay. I can believe that, I guess. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy added, Ahsoka has become a fan favorite with people of all ages. Has she really? And it's wonderful to see her continue to resonate with viewers in her very own headlining series. The firm explained the discrepancy between Disney's numbers and theirs. Quote, Disney has released global individual viewership numbers, whereas we pushed out data showing US household viewership over a shorter time period. Hope that helps. Okay. So, I mean, between the two, I'm more inclined to trust the Samba TV numbers. I don't trust any numbers that Disney is going to put out. But I will say this. My guess is that with Thrawn appearing in the last episode, the numbers have probably jumped. If I were to guess, I'd say probably through the first few episodes, there's been a decline in numbers probably, but with the appearance of Thrawn, that's probably caused a jump in the numbers because Thrawn's a popular character. Now, how much that's going to be in regards to the other streaming shows, I don't know. I would imagine when they say that this is about equal with Andor, that sounds about right to me because I know Ahsoka has a following. And I understand there is a certain group of Star Wars fans that are big fans of Ahsoka, because they grew up watching Clone Wars or whatever. And, I get that. But I think certainly for older fans like myself, Ahsoka's like nothing special. I don't hate Ahsoka or dislike her, but I don't really care about her character much. And it really sticks in my craw that this whole storyline with her and Thrawn is basically kind of remaking the Heir to the Empire story, but cutting out Luke, Han, and Leia and the other original characters and substituting Ahsoka and Sabine and these other Rebels characters. I mean, I'm just kind of like, who cares? I don't care about these characters, and remaking that story with these characters doesn't cut it for me. But I know there are people who really like Ahsoka, and I'm sure there are some who like Rebels too. But I mean, you're talking about like a subset of Star Wars fans because you've got like fans of the original trilogy, you've got fans of the sequel or the prequel trilogy, and then you've got the current kind of sequel fans. And I think people who like Ahsoka are mostly going to be people who grew up watching the sequel trilogy and watching Clone Wars back in like the 2000s, 2010s. And so again, you're talking about a subset of a subset. And that's only going to get you so far because I think the majority of older fans like myself don't care. As far as newer fans, I don't, maybe some of them like Ahsoka too, I don't know. But I just don't think enough people really like this character that much to, it works for a cartoon because cartoons can be done cheaper than live action. And if they make a film, if they go ahead and give Filoni a film and he makes it all about Ahsoka, I don't know. It's hard to see how that's going to be a big hit. All right. I probably got time for one more here. Okay, let me talk about Marvel just a little bit here, and then I'll wrap this up. Okay, and again, this is from Bounding into Comics. Marvel Comics to relaunch the Ultimate Universe with new Ultimate Spider-Man series helmed by Jonathan Hickman. Making a web swing for the fences in the hopes of enticing readers back to their books, Marvel has announced they will be officially reviving the Ultimate Universe, and like before, its debut will be led by everyone's favorite wall crawler. The unexpected return of the 1610 was first revealed on September 20th, courteous of Marvel's official Twitter account. Jonathan Hickman's Ultimate Invasion limited series spawns an entire new Ultimate Universe, complete with a new Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto. Is that how you say that? The publisher unveiled to the public alongside a very simple teaser image, which features just a spider-adorned U-shaped graphic and the text Ultimate Spider-Man. Get more details next month at Marvel NYCC. New York Comic Con, in other words. Launched in 2000 with the original Brian Michael Bendis written and Mark Bagley illustrated Ultimate Spider-Man series, the Ultimate imprint aimed to provide both an updated take on Marvel's roster of characters and an opportunity for readers to enjoy their stories without being overwhelmed by the publisher's then 70-year-long continuity. Sadly, Marvel editorial eventually got the best of itself and allowed the Ultimates universe's continuity to become overly convoluted in its own right. Not only that, but ostensibly in some effort to keep up the sense of the universe's ever progressing timeline, they proceeded to have many of the known Marvel heroes killed off and replaced with younger counterparts, such as Jimmy Hudson becoming the new Wolverine or Miles Morales taking up Peter Parker's webs after his death at the hands of the Punisher. As such, by the time the universe came to a definitive end in 2015's Secret War event, itself a casualty of Doctor Doom's multiversal machinations, the imprint had long been written off by fans as a shell of its former self. Following the conclusion, hold on. Okay. Following the conclusion of Secret Wars, the 616 became home to a few ultimate refugees, including the evil version of Reed Richards known as the Maker, the aforementioned Jimmy Hudson, and Miles Morales, along with the latter's family, a small group of mutants consisting of Armor, Guardians, Mach 2, and Quicksilver, and Thor's Hammer. Notably, it is thanks to the villain at the top of that list that the events leading up to this new Ultimate Spider Man series are currently playing out within the pages of the still ongoing Hickman penned Ultimate Invasion crossover. Let's see, therein, the Maker, sick of constantly being thwarted by the universe's heroes and fully aware that he physically does not belong in the 616, sets out to recreate and return to the 1610 universe. However, the disformed, is that even a word? I don't know. The disformed madman does so not with the intent of restoring everything to how it was. After all, the original timeline played out in such a way that he was considered a villain whose work must be stopped at all costs, rather than the omnipotent leader of men he considers himself to be. To this end, upon his homecoming, the Maker sets out manipulating major events from the original timeline in such a way that they would produce an outcome favorable to his maniacal plans to craft a perfect existence. Coming full circle, the first event the villain interferes with takes place in a science lab in New York, where he prevents a young bespectacled teenager from being bitten by a glowing gene manipulated spider. With the universe's flagship hero nipped in the bud, the history of the Ultimate Universe proceeds to unfold in a much different manner, replacing what was once a standard version of Earth with one divided up by various superclans, whose geopolitical actions are completely directed by the Maker himself, all in the aims of keeping humanity on track to reach the next stage of their evolution. It is this particular arachnid related change from the Maker that begs a relevant question regarding the Ultimate Spider Man relaunch. When it hits shelves, who exactly will be revealed to be wearing the webs, Peter Parker or Miles Morales? I'm going to go ahead and assume Miles Morales, probably. At current in the Ultimate Invasion storyline, not only is Peter Parker depowered, but Miles still resides in the 616, having defiantly rejected an offer from the Maker to accompany him back to their home universe. Okay. Of course, with one issue left in the mirror series to go, absolutely anything could happen. From Peter being depowered to Miles becoming trapped in the 1610 following a hypothetical last ditch effort to stop the Maker's plans. Thus, as it stands, it could be anyone from Peter to Miles to even a brand new hero who ends up donning the webs in the 1610. I guess it's possible. I guess maybe they could just introduce a whole new Spider Man, and that might happen. As an aside, it should be further noted that though Marvel is advertising the upcoming Ultimate Spider-Man as the official reboot of the Ultimate Universe, the universe has already made a pair of canon appearances across Marvel's various comics in the years since it was erased by Doom and the Molecule Man. First came in the second volume of the Bendis written Spider-Man, whose conclusion revealed that the universe was alive and well, with its then recently revived version of Peter Parker standing shoulder to shoulder with the current team of Ultimates. The universe was later seen once more in 2020's Venom Volume 4, number 26, wherein the Maker is shown successfully activating a gateway back to the 1610, which in his absence has become a desolate superhero-less hellscape. Ultimately, no pun intended, whether or not these events receive any mention or play into the events of Ultimate Invasion or Ultimate Spider-Man, Volume 3 remains to be seen. I'm guessing they won't. Okay, so, I liked the Ultimate version when it first came out. I thought it was interesting. Um, I particularly liked the Ultimates series. I thought that one was really well done. But it kind of outlived its usefulness. I think that's why it eventually ceased to exist, in part because so many of the changes that they adopted or did to update the characters wound up kind of bleeding over into the mainstream universe anyway. So eventually it was becoming kind of redundant. Um, I doubt that I'll get this series. I'm just so turned off by Marvel and DC at this point. I don't expect that I'll get it, but who knows? Maybe out of curiosity, I'll try a couple of issues and see how it works. All right, I'm coming up on an hour here. So I'm going to go ahead and end this live stream here. And again, I want to thank those who tuned in during the stream and those who will listen on a rewatch. While you're here, hey, maybe sub to my channel, check out some of my videos. And I hope you all have a good evening and rest of the weekend. And I should be back streaming again next week. I will see you all then. Have a good night.